Welcome to the Jewellers Academy podcast. My name is Jessica Rose, a serial jewellery business owner, and I founded the multi-award-winning London Jewellery School and Jewellers Academy. Having helped over 1 million people learn jewellery making, I passionately believe that anyone can have a successful business making and selling things they love. Each week you'll hear tips, support and practical advice on how to launch and grow your jewellery or handmade business, as well as inspiring interviews. If, like me, you believe that handmade is best, then you're in the right place. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Now let's jump into this week's episode. Okay, so a big welcome everyone to this week's podcast. This week I have a special treat for you because I'm joined by the wonderful Kerry of Thorn and Claw Jewellery. And anyone who doesn't know Kerry or doesn't know about her business, you're definitely going to want to check her out because she has a very inspiring story. She started her business and looks like it's been going for about 10 years and it's been going for 1 year. So she's done a lot of things in quite a short space of time. Very inspiring, wonderful to check out. And her jewelry is also incredible. Lots of thorns and claws and kind of edgy designs and, kind of connecting with the darker side of nature. So yes, I'm very excited to be joined by Kerry today. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
Awesome. All right. So should we start at the beginning and just tell us a little bit about how you got involved in jewellery making and why you decided to set up this jewellery business that you have?
Of course. It's quite a long story, I suppose, actually, so I'll try not to take too much time with it. But previous from this year, I've worked in UK wildlife conservation for the past 10 years. Loved my job, felt so lucky to work for a number of wildlife charities in the UK that do incredible work. It started with a mixture of working out in the field and a bit of office work as well. And I found that as my career progressed, it became more and more office-based. I did a lot of computer work, a lot of digital work, and I found myself getting outside less and less. And it came to the point where my highlight of the day, of my working day, was my lunchtime walk. And I was really fortunate in that the old building I used to work in was a converted barn in the sort of grounds of an old ruined castle. So the lunchtime walk was peak happiness. It was really lovely. I started to really miss doing something creatively with my hands. I found myself sort of inside in front of screens all of the time, and I just searched for something where after my hard work I would have something physical out of it, and that worked my hands. And I was lucky in that kind of in between my commute there was a silversmithing school, and it's something I've always fancied doing. I've always loved jewellery from a young age. It's quite a strange reason, but I've always been into fantasy. So books, video games, TV series, anything that covers the kind of medieval swords and dragons kind of theme. And I loved the concept that in a video game, for example, you could equip a necklace and it would give you +5 health or 50% extra strength or something like that. So from a young age, I found necklaces and rings that would have like shiny gems or runes carved into them, and it would sort of help me feel more confident or stronger. Or if I knew, right up till today actually, if I know I'm going to have a particularly tough day, I might wear something that makes me feel like, right, okay, you've got this. Or helps me feel grounded, and it just, that's something I've always been fascinated with, and I love jewellery for that reason today. And the love of fantasy as I got older stemmed into a love of like history and folklore and mythology, and I love that drawn into jewellery. And jewellery's, it's an ancient kind of pastime, tribes from centuries ago, jewellery was treasured. And it still is today. And I love that part of it as well. So that's what got me into silversmithing, a mixture of that and just wanting to create something with my hands. I just missed artistically making something that was real rather than on a screen.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the way you describe jewelry as like this kind of superpower as well that can like give you, probably strength that you already have inside, but, remind you of it almost. I think that's really, I've not heard it talked about in that way before. And I love that kind of visual, and it really comes out in your kind of style as well. Because I think something about your business, one of the reasons why it's done so well so far, is that you have this really strong identity as a jeweler, and very kind of strong signature style, which is something we talk about quite a lot. How did it go from like first silversmithing class to developing this kind of style? Was it quite natural, or what was your process in that?
I've always been quite personally drawn to less conventional sort of styles and such. And I think having that within me anyway came out naturally in my work. And there used to be a bit of a running joke in the class I was part of that I'd always be making the biggest jewellery, or I'd always be the one oxidising. Everyone else would be trying to sort of polish everything as shiny as possible. And I'm like, no, it must be darker.
Get the black in.
And if ever there was anything in the pickle pot, they'd be like, oh, Kerry, that's yours. They would know straight away. So that happened naturally. And to be honest with you, when I first started, it was never anything I dreamed of having as a business, I suppose. It was a creative outlet, and it still is. I'm so grateful to be able to switch off completely and, sit and actually make something. And it just developed over time. And I think it happens to a lot of people. You start wearing some of the things that you've made, and people are like, oh, wow, where did you get that? And you're like, oh, actually, I made this. So a lot of people started saying, oh, can I buy one? Or do you have a shop? And so that happened naturally, the sort of idea of having somewhere where I could offer these creations to other people. But no, when I first started, it was completely an outlet just for myself. So that happened naturally. But I think my style came through quite quickly when I started bringing in things I'd found on my lunchtime walks. I've found a sparrow foot or an acorn or something. What can I make out of it? And I'd sort of be met with a blank stare, and then it would be explained to me how to do it. But I think everyone else sort of, it was an odd look. But I think when people realise what you're doing and they realise the sort of mechanics and the creativity behind it, I think depending on anyone's taste, you can appreciate how it's made. So there's things that I can see other people making that I wouldn't myself wear. But I'm like, wow, I love what they've done with that, and the colours that they've used and the textures. So you can get inspiration from anything, really.
Yeah, definitely. And you moved on to wax carving as well, didn't you? Which I think a lot of your work is now. What was that like? How do you feel about silversmithing versus wax carving? Is it a dual love, or is there one that has your heart?
Wax carving definitely opened doors and possibilities for me that I didn't think I would be able to do. The silversmithing class I did originally, was working with wire and sheet metal, which is great. I think everyone should have a foundation in that because it's the base of everything else. And I still do elements of that, even though I work with casting mostly now. But to me, nature is the ultimate designer. There's nothing in my eyes that I could make that would outdo what's already naturally occurring. And you can tweak it yourself. There's some things where I've put two claws together in sort of like a sickle shape. That obviously isn't in nature, but has been cast from talons directly. And I love the shape and the textures that casting brings out, especially if you oxidise it and sort of really bring out those different highlights and shadows that I don't think I would be able to replicate myself without actually taking in a life casting. So definitely that. And there's so many different ideas I've got as well. And I love that you can take a wax from a mould and you can tweak it a little bit and then remould it and have something completely different. I love how flexible it is working with wax and casting.
Yeah, you can see from your work as well just how much you enjoy that connection with nature, and you're very true to it in many ways, I think, which comes across. And I think that's part of why it really helps to have this strong kind of identity or strong signature style, because it means, I imagine, we're going to get on to talking about this next, but I imagine it's really impacted your branding and your name for your business and, kind of everything that comes thereafter. So I think anyone struggling to find a signature style, it seems like the way that you've done it is just really, really thought about what you want and what brings you joy and pleasure, those walks and, your connection with nature and the materials that you like to work with. And you kind of it seems like you've had the discipline to stick with that and not just do everything. Maybe that's just what you show, but that's what it seems like. It's, you've not been tempted to throw a butterfly in.
It's been tempting at times. And there's, people have said to me, oh, would you ever do markets, like local markets and things? And I sort of look at my work and I just think, I'm not quite sure what the reception would be at a local sort of craft fair to the sort of typical person that would come to that. And you think, oh, maybe I could do a line just for markets. And you think, hang on a minute, I have to focus on what, like you said, what makes me most happy as well. Otherwise, you could just be making any old thing. So there has been times where I thought, oh, actually, I could do a butterfly, or I could do a flower or something along those lines. But you're like, that's not very Thorn and Claw. I need to sort of stick to what's important to me. And it also gives you that niche to work with as well, which is really lovely. And there's been times where I really doubted it and I thought, is this actually going to appeal to anyone? Does anyone else want to wear a huge raven talon on a daily basis? But it turns out they do, yes, which is lovely.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people out there, aren't they? And everyone has different styles. Everyone has different preferences. So yeah, I love that you started with what you wanted, and that passion has come through. And I think that dedication to it means that people are really drawn to what you're doing, instead of thinking, what do people want, and trying to create stuff. And then, that's always a little bit more convoluted, I think. So coming on to your branding, because you've got amazing branding, amazing photography, we'll talk a bit as well about your story and how quickly all this has happened. But how did you do that? How did you get all of that together?
It came quite naturally. I have quite a small colour palette in my own personal life anyway, so it tends to be blacks, greys, sort of mossy greens. Tends to be what my wardrobe looks like if you sort of open it. Again, my house is decorated similarly. But the main inspiration for the branding, it came to me when I wasn't even thinking about branding, which I think sometimes is maybe the best way to do it. It was a trip I went on with my other half to Iceland to celebrate my birthday. And I remember standing on one of the black sand beaches and seeing the moss coming over the lava and reaching the beach. And I remember standing there thinking, these colours, like this whole landscape, it's so inspiring. And I was so drawn to everything, and the harsh sort of brackish textures of the sand and the moss and the lava. It was absolutely beautiful. And I think when it came down to actually thinking about my brand and building my website, I remember thinking, I want it to feel like this. So I took a picture of Iceland and I took the colours out of it. And I can't remember what website it was. I think it might be Coolers that does it.
I think there's one called Colour Picker.
Yes, there's a few different ones.
Yeah.
And again, going back to nature being the ultimate designer, like, why not take a colour palette directly from a landscape or a piece of nature that you love? So I did, and I tweaked it a little bit. And even the colour names that came up, I think it's like fern green and timber wolf and smoky black. And I'm like, right, this was meant to be, because these sound like my kind of colours. So that's how that was born, really. And I always had the idea that I wanted a very minimal monochrome kind of look, and the little pop of sort of fern mossy green really brings it to life, and I absolutely love it. And again, I've designed it completely how I would want it for me, to be honest with you. If I stumbled across my own website, I would probably buy it. I'd probably buy my own stuff. I don't know if that sounds a bit silly.
That's brilliant. And we often ask people, like, would you buy not only the product, but the way that it's laid out, like the way that it's communicated? Would you buy it? It's such a good test, isn't it? Because if you're like, actually, I don't think I would, then it's like, okay, great. What can I change? What adjustment would mean that I would? So I think it's a good litmus test for yourself. I also love what you said about the colour picker, because I think that often we know what rough colour we want. Like, I want a black, I want a green, I want a brown, but getting the specific nuance of colour, using a picture for that is a great idea, because it's, I know I struggled with that with my branding, finding, like, I was like, okay, I want a kind of pinky, but not too pink, but not too, and it's just hard to describe to yourself, isn't it, what you want? And then if you can find something in nature or in a picture or wherever that you can pick out of, that can be really helpful, I think. So yeah, good tip.
It's really helpful to narrow it down as well. And sometimes when you have your brand colours, you only want a few tones that go together really well. So if you wanted, like you said, like a pinky colour, you could get like a desert sunset picture and take the colours out of that, because you'll probably get about 5 different pinks, but they'll all match really beautifully. And then maybe you could pick like a grey that was a part of the rocks or something that would match really, really well. And again, nature's done that for you completely. You don't even have to think, oh, what grey is going to go with this pink? It's just like, here you are. I know
It's
which one's
done.
match.
Yeah, it's done. It was created for us before we were even born.
Exactly.
Love that. So then, okay, so tell us about the name, because I know there was a bit of a story behind the name and I can't remember what it was.
I think I've heard you say this, sometimes picking the name is the hardest part, and you can come up with the perfect name and then you Google it and someone else has already got it, whether it's a similar business or something else completely. And sometimes I think you just have to count your losses. Sometimes it's not worth competing with a business that, you know, when you Google it, come up first, because you'll just get lost among the noise. So I think it's better to compromise with yourself, even if it isn't the perfect name. And I came up with a name and that exact thing happened. It had already been put out there, and, you know, the Instagram handle was taken and the domain name was taken. So it was like, right, okay. And I looked at everything I was making and it was just thorns and claws and bones and skulls. And I was like, right, thorn and claw. That sounds really nice. And I liked the way it rolled on my tongue. And you think, right, okay, the next thing to check, has anyone else got this? No. Domain name was free. The Instagram handle was free. Right, it's meant to be. So it was that, definitely. And it was, again, inspired by the sort of flora and fauna that I was using, being a bit spikier, a bit darker. I think it's really nice. I really like it. I'm pleased, actually. I'm grateful that was open and that no one else had taken it.
Yeah, no, it's perfect for exactly what you're doing. And, you know, I think that's true. Whenever I'm trying to brainstorm names, I sit by like the domain checker and go through each one.
Yeah.
Because it's the worst thing, isn't it? When you get attached to a name and you're like, this is it. This is perfect. I know it's happened to me so many times. And then I check and nothing's available. And you sort of think, oh, is there any way? But I agree with you, trying to compete with, I mean, it can work sometimes, but you kind of do yourself a favor if you can find something a little more original. So brilliant. So you put the branding together. Tell us a bit about your photography, because I think that's also very strong, and you've got a very strong style with your photography, which really, I think it really shows the work in its best light. How did you develop that? And has it been difficult, and do you do it yourself?
A mixture of everything, really. I think I committed to myself early on, knowing that photography was going to be such an important part to work on and really nail and invest in, because one, if someone can't physically hold the jewellery themselves, they're going to need as many pictures as possible to get the best idea as to how it will look when they wear it. And two, if you want to be showing your work as much as possible, you need to have a folder full of images that you can use, and you're not constantly sort of using the same one. So I knew early on that photos and photography was going to be really, really important. There is no white in my branding, so I decided again early on that I wouldn't have any white backgrounds, and I wanted something that looked natural and dark, and again had all of the sort of brackish textures that I liked. So I looked online for backgrounds to use, and I found some really lovely companies. And I think that really helps getting a few backgrounds and making that investment, because even if you do outsource your photography later on, you can send them the backgrounds and you keep that branding, you keep that house style through all of your photos, even if 5 different people have taken them. And originally I took all of the photos myself. So the first collection, the product photos were all done in-house, and I bought, I think it's the Amazon Basics photo box. It has like built-in lighting, and it's really good. Actually, I would really recommend it. Great if you're doing it at home. I do find if you leave it unattended and you have a cat, they will sit in it. So mine's got cat hair in now, which turns up in every photo. So there is that. Do not leave it unattended. But it works really, really well.
Need a cat lock.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know how she got in there. And something else I did as well was I got sample tiles and sample like house cladding sort of cut off sent to me, and I've used some of those. And it's just thinking outside the box sometimes. I didn't want anything plastic, I didn't want anything fake. I wanted it all to be real, because that was really important to, again, my branding, sort of the overall feel of everything I was doing. I did quickly learn that photography is quite hard and quite time consuming, especially if you don't have the equipment at home. You know, doing jewellery photo and picking out really high definition detail, if you don't have the right equipment to do that, it's a really big investment. So Karen Young, I think if you're sort of part of the Jewellers Academy community, you know her name very well. Sent off pieces to her and she absolutely nailed it. She got some fantastic photos. And even though, you know, it's dark and edgier than sort of the normal things that she's done, she just knew. I think when you have a strong branding and you have those guidelines, you can give it to anyone, even if their usual sort of work is different, and they can just do that. And obviously Karen's generally great anyway. So that's happened as well. That was a huge help. Again, having a vat of images to be able to use for social media, for product images, for your newsletters. And I'm currently in the process of model photography as well.
Amazing.
They'll be coming out really, really soon. They're beautiful. We're just in the final stages at the moment. I think you've said it before, getting pictures of your pieces on models is probably a real thing to, if you're going to invest in anything, I would say that, and a really good website platform. But that's just my opinion.
Definitely. I think it's something that we put off for so long because it can be quite expensive and it takes time. But you're right, model photography, once you've got all the basics ready, it's such a worthwhile investment because, like you said, if people are buying online, I mean, I know from my experience of buying, because I buy jewelry online, if I can't see it on a person, I don't fully get the scale. No matter how many like leaves and things are in the picture, it's not the same. I have to see it. And then it's also kind of just showing that this is the kind of person or this is the kind of style that I'm buying into. Like there's that whole kind of piece around just connection with whatever the brand is. So yes. And I think, you know, I've had a sneak peek at some of your photos and they are incredible. So, but I think it is, again, it really helps that you have this strong style because when you go to do a photo shoot, you're not just going to be a person stood against a wall with like jeans and a t-shirt on. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's someone's style, but you've got this, you know, you've got all this stuff to work with. And I think that's why the foundation work of working on your branding, thinking about who you are as a jeweler, what you want to put across. And even if you're not sure, just committing to something that you can always adjust is so powerful because it's, your business is a wonderful example of how all of that has kind of come together. So photography, awesome. We talked very briefly about Instagram, and I know that it's been very impressive how you've grown your Instagram. You know, you've not had this business long, have you? It's been a year or so.
Yeah, January I launched, and what a year to pick, but it'll all be fine.
So you launched in January 2020.
Yep.
Bless your soul. And but you've done incredibly well. And you know, you've really grown your Instagram. It looks, like I said at the beginning, it looks like, you know, if I didn't know your story, I would say you've been doing this for a long, long time. So could you share with us some kind of tips or strategies? How did you get your Instagram to be so awesome?
Thank you. It's been a slog, I won't lie, but you have to put the work in. And I think it's having that niche and again, that strong brand and knowing what you will and won't be doing as part of your brand really helps, because sometimes if you have too much stuff to choose from, it's overwhelming. I think one of the things that has really helped is finding out other things that my audience are interested in. And it's all the stuff that I'm interested in anyway. So, you know, you get 30 hashtags per post. Use all of them. I know some people say, oh, you know, don't use too many, but I would just use all of them. But don't necessarily put things like, you know, handmade, metalsmithing, silversmithing, because the people that want to find your work don't necessarily use that. It's fantastic for meeting other creators, and I've met some lovely people. I met lovely people on Instagram, you know, digitally, through that, and there's a whole community, and it's just lovely. But you need to think about how people might accidentally find you. So for me, some of the hashtags I use might be like witchy things or wild nature, or sometimes I location tag different posts in different places that I know the people who might like my jewellery might go. So I might do something like Glastonbury or Stonehenge or the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo. just so people accidentally find you. I think it sort of opens it up. It's really lovely way of doing it as well. And it really does build a sense of community, because you end up bumping into people that are also using that tag, and then they share your work, and it turns out that they've got similar followers to you, and you can share their work back. That's a really lovely thing to do, actually, is find other creators in your sort of sphere of work. And if you share each other's work on your stories, quite often you'll have an audience that has similar tastes, and it doesn't cost anything. You're only helping someone else and they're helping you. You're helping those people find more work by more handmade creators. So there is no negative to it at all. And it's a really lovely way of doing it. And I think sometimes posting on Instagram can feel really corporate and really salesy and a bit, and I was really uncomfortable with it, to be honest. Again, I didn't originally intend to have like a business per se. It's just, due to COVID, I lost my job in June. And luckily this was already sort of bubbling away quite nicely in the background. And it's like, well, okay, it might be time to do this full time. So it sort of happened naturally. But with Instagram, I think just be authentic and talk to people and communicate with people and use tags that they're using themselves. So maybe look up people that you would be like, I think this is my ideal customer. See what they're posting about, what tags they're using, and use that yourself. And then again, the really basic thing, just turn up. Do it every day. Every day might be a bit much, so don't overdo it yourself. Do it maybe 3 times a week. But if you don't post anything, obviously nothing happens. So there's that.
Yeah.
I'm waffling a bit now.
No, it's great tip. There's great tips. And I love what you said about the hashtags, like obviously it's great to use jewelry hashtags to find other jewelers and other makers. But yeah, for your audience, it's what are their interests? And if you don't know, it's, well, what might their interests be? Or what are your interests? What do you care about? Whether it's like holidays or tea or going to the beach or being out in nature and then, searching some hashtags around that. So I think that's a brilliant tip. And, also just the honesty of just putting quite a lot of work in. I think sometimes we see other people, we compare ourselves to others on the internet and we think, oh, they've just got everything sorted and they've got loads of followers and all of that. And it's like, well, no, they probably spend hours every day building it, and you can do that too. So it's always good to be honest about that. It doesn't just fly in from nowhere. Not at the beginning anyway.
It still hasn't, to be honest. It's still not flying in from nowhere.
But that's part of the fun, isn't it? It's part of the fun is, we put the effort in and we get the results. And I think it can be very rewarding. And I know we spoke before when we had a chat about giveaways. Do you want to just share a little bit about that? Because I know you've had some very successful giveaways that have helped grow your audience. Are there any things that you would say have worked well in that and things that perhaps you wouldn't have done?
Definitely. I think giveaways are really, really lovely. It came about actually because I was so overwhelmed with how supportive everyone had been. I just thought, I really want to do something nice. I really want to be able to give something back. And obviously I can't afford to sort of give everyone free jewellery all the time. But I thought, right, I'll just do a little competition. And it's, again, just seeing some other people do it as well. So you just sort of say, all you've got to do, tag in your friend, share it on your Instagram. And one of the things that I did as well, completely optional, was sign up to my email newsletter. And then I went through all the DMs and emails randomly. You can do a random number generator and pick a winner. And they work really, really well because it's a great way of getting your work shown and at the same time feeling like you can sort of give back to your community. And I think one of the things that worked really well was I didn't just select one particular piece and say, this is the one you're going to win. I took a bit of a leap and just said, you can pick whatever you like out of the collection. So that helped in a way. Surprisingly, a sort of pleasant surprise was that it gave me an idea about what people were sharing, what they most wanted to win. And you think, I didn't think that would be one that lots and lots of people would really like. So it also gives you an idea about what people are kind of after. But it definitely works really well. I wouldn't do them too much. One, because you just don't want to be doing it all the time because people won't get as excited about it. But it's a really, really lovely way of getting your work out there and feeling like you sort of give something back as well. So definitely recommend doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think giveaways are wonderful to do, especially like before a launch. You know, we talk a lot about because it builds your audience. So if you're about to launch something or do a kind of new collection or whatever it is, something that you want people to see, it's a great way of building up that audience just beforehand. But I think it's been wonderful to see your giveaways and to see how popular they are, which is not surprising because you have, incredible work. And it's just, nice to see all those comments and build that community around what you're doing as well. So you spoke a little bit about your job that you had before and that sadly COVID has been a bit of a, pain for everyone. That's understatement. You didn't have that anymore. I guess you were made redundant. So you started this business with a full-time job, which I think will be quite inspiring to people because a lot of people might be in that situation. So can you tell us, like, what was it like doing it alongside your job? And then what was the experience of then transitioning to, okay, this is full-time now?
Exhausting, I'm not going to lie, but completely worth it. I wouldn't do it any different. I think, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have like children, I don't have a family, so I can't imagine how difficult it is balancing all of that. But I think everyone, if you really admit it to yourself, has time that could be better used. Whether that's, after dinner, you just watch a bit of rubbish on telly for a few hours, or you find yourself scrolling on social media, or there's anything. There's always something where you go, actually, do you know what? If I'm honest with myself, I could use that better, even if it's just half an hour a day. So I would do my full-time job. I'd come home from work. I would have my dinner, let that settle a bit, and then a couple of hours before bed, I would say to myself, I'm just going to do something. You always say, and it sticks in my mind every day, just do one thing. And it really works. And I think if you say, right, my one thing is I'm going to launch my website, that's a bit big.
That's more than one thing. That's like 6 months of things.
Exactly. I mean, it's one really, really big thing. So just sort of really pare it back. And there'd be some nights where I'd come home and I'd feel like rubbish and just like, I'm not going to get anything done today. And you're like, no, just write a paragraph of copy that is going to go on that web page, and like, right, okay, bash it out, get it done. And then you can fully commit to slobbing out and knowing that you've still made progress. And it really helps. I mean, don't get me wrong, I sound like I'm perfect and I'm really not. There's days where you come home like, it's just not happening today. But as long as they're not that frequent, you'll still make so much progress. I think one of the things that was invaluable was joining the JA Bootcamp, because sometimes it's so overwhelming thinking of all of the things that you have to do. And if you're setting up by yourself, not only do you have to do the actual physical silversmithing and making the jewellery, you have to be your own marketer, you have to set up your own website, you have to be your own photographer. So to have the boot camp to actually guide you through step by step and focus you on a certain task for a period of time is the closest you're going to get to actually someone stood next to you and being like, have you worked on this today? Which is really lovely for that accountability as well. So that helped massively, because there is so much to do. But just doing a little bit every day, even when you're knackered from coming home from work, is a huge help. Whether you just write a sentence, you just find the title for something, you just make a tweak to a design, just one little thing. And that's how I got it done, really. And it was later than I intended. I wanted to launch before Christmas last year, but just do it when you can, really.
Life got in the way.
Life, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning the bootcamp. I mean, it's been wonderful to have you on the bootcamp this year. You've been a very active member of the community, and it's always wonderful to see people's journeys. And for anyone listening who doesn't know what we're talking about, each year we run a program called the Jewellery Business Bootcamp, which is an 8-week program where we go through pretty much everything in running a jewelry business, from the basics through to kind of high growth and all the different strategies and things you need to do. So Kerry, what was your bootcamp journey like? How did you find out about it, and then what bits kind of did you work on most this year?
I think one of the things early on, and a tip I probably would give anyone that is sort of working full time, is working, one, on a budget, and two, making the most of the time that you've got. And Jewellers Academy have so many free resources And I think I stumbled across you that way. I think you had a brilliant branding video on your YouTube channel. It was something along those lines. And I remember watching it and thinking, this is really lovely. I went through it all. I still have the notes now that I took off of it. And that was a key part of getting a really nice brand as well, was going through that free video. So I joined the bootcamp because I thought, I don't have much time to myself in the evenings after work. You know, work gets the best hours out of me. So I really need that guide, that kind of, this is what you do, this is what you do next, and then do this. And it was silly things like my commute was quite long. So I would put the bootcamp audio on my phone from some of the sort of the classes, and I would listen to them on my way into work and my way back. Not the video, for the record. So I feel like I was learning something, and in a way, starting the day listening to the classes was really nice because it focused me on, you know, this is my job and I do love my job, but I have something else that I'm working on as well. It was really motivating. And then I'd come home and I would action the thing that I'd listened to in the car the morning and evening before.
Amazing.
And the bootcamp made me realise there was so much to think about that I hadn't even considered. Again, because I never really intended to sort of have a business. Sounds odd saying that.
And now you do.
Yeah, like registering as a sole trader and sort of getting your prices right and things like that. Just things that you wouldn't have even fathomed before. Definitely. And I'm going to go through it again, to be honest, when it's live next year.
Yes, that'll be fun. So, and it's lovely how the community come together and support each other, isn't it? I think, you know, just seeing similar names pop up, and I remember seeing your branding boards and things like that, and just thinking, oh, it's amazing. And, you know, getting all the support. Does it help having that to kind of cheer you on?
Oh, definitely. And I'm probably one of the things I like the most about this is I'm very introverted. So I'm quite happy just tinkering away by myself, but sometimes you do want a pair of eyes on something, especially if there's other people that have been doing it a lot longer, or someone else might spot something that you sometimes, when you've been staring at something for so long, you don't notice the obvious things. So if you just go, do you think this works, or can anyone see any mistakes with that, or I'm really unsure about this, and people will come up with stuff that you just wouldn't have even thought of. And also sort of being able to cheer everyone on and have that sort of support network is really, really lovely. And you can dip in and out of it as much as you like. You know, if you wanted to just hunker away, you probably could. But I think there's so much benefit from being able to share ideas with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful to see you use the resources in there and to really kind of go for it. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is your website, because you set up your website this year, didn't you? And
yes.
It looks awesome. And I know you've been sending out email newsletters and all those things that we kind of talk about and do together. So yeah, what's that experience been like for you? And is there anything that you would share with jewellers thinking about starting their website or updating it that you've learned?
I think if this year in general has probably taught anyone anything, if you have a business, is that you need to be online because you can't always guarantee that you're going to be able to sell in person or sell in a shop. So even if that is, you know, if markets are your normal way of doing things, I think having a backup is the right way to go. And also a website that's completely yours. So I did toy around with the idea of like an Etsy. And I do have an Etsy actually, but I don't put any work into it. I've got my original collection on there and it just sort of sits for anyone that sort of stumbles across it. And I've had a very small handful of sales off of it, and that's fine by me. But to have your own website that you have control over and that you can tweak and you can brand, and knowing that they're not going to change the rules and you have to sell it this way, I think is a really, really good thing to do. And something I committed to myself early on was that if I was going to do a website, I was going to do it properly and I was going to make it an investment. I've said investment a lot. I wasn't chucking money around all kinds of places. I didn't have much money, and you know, I still don't as a startup. I think you've got to really decide what's important to you. And I think early on, I knew that a good website and really lovely photos were going to be the two things that I was going to go all in on. And I'm really glad I did. I use Shopify as a platform. I think it converts to around £20 to £25 a month, depending on the conversion rate, because it's American. I think it works out about 22, 23 usually. And I would say it pays for itself. The developers are always coming out with things to help you. Depending on whether you pick a theme or not, the developers of that are usually really helpful. There's so many plugin apps. So something that I did this year was I bought a label printer because I have horrendous handwriting. And I got so embarrassed by handwriting some of the addresses on my boxes. I was like, no, I need to get a label printer. And there's a Shopify plugin that helps me print off my labels for me. It's really geared up to making it as easy as possible. And I think, again, it comes down to, if you have limited time and resources, you need to pick the ones that are best going to benefit you. And Shopify makes it so. I'm not sponsored by them, I just really like them.
Sponsored by Shopify.
Yeah, no, sadly not.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day. But definitely. And, you know, there are cheaper alternatives out there, but I think sometimes the struggle with actually building a website itself, if you worked out your own personal sort of hourly rate or how much your full-time job pays you per hour, and then you sort of charged yourself hypothetically to build your own website, you probably realise it's costing you a fortune because maybe you've picked something that was free or picked something that was hard to edit because it was cheaper. And actually just making a slight tweak to how much you're spending for your platform, you might actually save yourself a lot of time. And that's the thing that people really don't have a lot of, is time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very wise way to look at it is, you know, if you're, and it's kind of this thing of like, if you buy cheap, you buy twice. So you might start with, I know I did this. I started with a platform which was like the cheapest platform because I was scared. I was worried. What if I don't sell anything? What if I can't make it back? What, you know, and of course that then became a self-fulfilling prophecy that I didn't sell anything and I couldn't make it back because the website wasn't very good. So people just left it. And it does take stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes to be like, I'm going to actually invest in myself. I'm going to, you know, put money in this idea and I'm going to make it happen. And there's no option. It's going to happen. And it seems to me that's what you've done.
Yeah, and I really like stuff. Again, I knew that's a part of my branding. I wanted a minimal look. I wanted it to be really clean. I wanted the photography to do most of the work for me. So I wanted a website that would give me that. And, you know, looking at Shopify, I love the layouts. And I love the possibilities of it as well. So the fact that you can do apps and plugins and, you know, there's so many. I haven't even begun to explore all of them. I'm sure there's many goodies I'm missing out on. But definitely, I would definitely give it a try. And I think they have free trials and things. So you can even play around and just see, actually, do you know what? Maybe I don't like this. Maybe I will find something else. Or no, this is for me, definitely.
Wonderful. Well, Kerry, thank you so much. You've given so much wisdom today. You know, you've talked about everything pretty much to do with starting your business. And, you know, I just want to say one more time that I'm just so impressed with how much you've done in that time. And I think it's because you've applied yourself, you've just gone for it, you've made some really strong decisions. And I think that it will inspire a lot of people to do that for themselves as well. So if people want to find out more about you, check out your jewellery, connect with you, where is the best place for them to go?
Instagram, if you want to get me directly, is, well, everything's just Thorn and Claw. So primarily on Instagram, but you can find me on other things as well. And then the website's thornandclaw.com.
Awesome. Definitely go check it out. Sign up to Kerry's mailing list and connect with her because, she's got a wonderful business and a wonderful heart, as you can tell. Very giving. So, thank you, Kerry. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.